Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett. On Our Time, we've chatted to some amazing people, but it's impossible to describe our next guest's remarkable accomplishments. A politician, a musician, and many other professions in between, including having a theatre named after him. Our special guest is Dr. Don Hopgood. Now, Dr. Hopgood, I've got this pain in my tummy. Do you get that when you're officially introduced as Dr. Don?
No, not really. I got used to it.
Yes.
Got used to it. It's been a long time.
Quite. Look, Don, you genuinely have had the most amazing career and in so many diverse areas. Mm-hmm. But like everybody, it started somewhere.
Yep.
So your parents?
Well, okay.
Well, you had them, I guess.
Born in Prospect.
Yes.
So that meant waving to the guys knocking off work at the Islington Railway workshops. It meant Prospect Primary School in Braun Road. It meant the Methodist Church on Prospect Road, and it meant the North Adelaide Football Club up on Main North Road.
It was an enclave in those days that people lived and worked and loved.
Absolutely.
Just the area you were born.
Dad worked for a paint company. Mum was a stenographer, and then when she married, like many women of her generation, she stayed home.
Right. Now, the interesting thing about that is that you progressed from that. You obviously had an ambition to be a teacher, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's right.
Why a teacher? Was there an influence of a teacher at school?
It's interesting. I mean, you look at the teachers and you think, oh, I could do that. Why not?
It's not quite that easy, though, is it? I'm sure you found
not at
out.
all. It's also one way of making sure you got an education, because in those days the government would pay for your university tuition.
To uni, yes.
As it turned out, I got a scholarship, but it was covered by the education department anyway.
Now, in those days, you sort of shot off into the country somewhere. Where did you end up?
Whyalla. Had a year teaching at Whyalla, where I taught at the high school. I also taught at TAFE, and for a little while I also taught at the Institute of Technology up there.
And you were teaching?
Science.
Right. Did you want a science career? Was that you were heading into that direction?
Look, my uncle by marriage showed me the stars when I was a little tacker.
Right.
I got hooked onto astronomy.
Right.
That's what I was going to be an astronomer, be a scientist. But as I got to university, I found that the library was more congenial than the laboratory. And since I'd always had an interest in history and geography, social studies, I swapped over to that.
Right. How did the politics come into your life?
Well, it's hard to say, actually. As a little kid, because, you see, we saluted the flag.
Was the family political?
Well, they voted Labor, but not overtly political.
Now, saying that, salute the flag.
Yeah.
I'm an Australian.
I mean,
hang on, can you remember it?
No, it was before that.
Before that?
Oh, yes. I honour her King George VI.
Oh, no, I didn't get to that.
And this was the Union Jack, and I'm thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I'm just a little. What's going on here? We're Australians.
Yes.
And at the time, of course, the Prime Minister was Bob Menzies.
Yes.
Who was a great imperialist.
Yes.
And I didn't like that at all. We're Australians. Australians.
But I remember that we used to have at school assemblies. No, I can't remember the whole thing. But I do. I salute the flag, I honour the Queen and something or other.
Well, of course, when I did it, was an earlier transcription, you had to promise cheerfully to obey her laws, the Queen's laws.
His laws.
Now, his laws, yeah. And, of course, the Prime Minister was Ben Chifley. So the kids used to say, I promised Chifley to obey her laws.
I love that. But you sort of ended up in politics as a surprise to you, wasn't it?
As
a surprise? It wasn't something you were heading towards.
You see, I joined the Labor Party in 1965 at the time of the state election. I got involved in the local sub-branch. Hugh Hudson, who was the local member, said, Hoppy, there are 1 or 2 seats coming up.
Hoppy.
Why don't you have a try at one of them?
Was that your nickname, Hoppy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Not very imaginative.
Hoppy Hopgood.
And, of course, I got pre-selection for Mawson, and I got into Parliament a year before I wanted to be, because I was going to finish my doctorate in a particular year, but Steele Hall called the 1970 election a year early.
Right.
And suddenly I was in Parliament, and
Was that a shock?
they allowed me to finish the PhD part time over 3 years.
Right. Oh God. And being a politician at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
So you experienced probably the most important years in South Australia in politics, perhaps until the current sort of what's been happening in the last year, but because you were there for the Don Dunstan era.
Well, was indeed, yes, it was a very exciting time. It seemed that anything was possible. And when you add the Whitlam years onto it as well, as I say, particularly in education, money flowed. The Schools Commission, all that stuff, we restructured the Education Department here in South Australia. Anything seemed to be possible for a while.
For a while, yeah, I was going to say it eventually did run out. But the years with Dunstan, the effect that must have had, well, the effect it had on society to begin with, but the effect in Parliament, because he didn't play by the old-fashioned rules or the standard rules.
Well, Don was an inspirational leader. He really was. And
they don't come along often, do they?
No, he really revved us up. And he knew his stuff. I mean, it wasn't just all show. He really knew his stuff. And keep in mind too, he'd been in Parliament a long time before he became Premier.
He'd worked it out.
People forget he was elected first for Norwood in 1954.
And he
didn't become Premier until 1966.
Right. So
it
he
was
certainly knew his way around.
Yeah.
Through the corridors,
That's
so
right.
to speak.
Yeah.
He had an enormous effect on everything.
Exactly.
I mean, really on everything.
Yeah.
The state was sort of withheld, wasn't it, back in that imperial logic up until that time?
Yep.
How did that affect you? Did that give you sort of a great joy that things were moving fast, or was it sort of intimidating at the same time?
No, I loved it. I really did. And I remember thinking, I'll always be able to say I was Don Dunstan's Minister of Education. One of my accomplishments.
But you became second in charge, didn't you?
Oh, that was under John Bannon in the 80s.
Oh, right. Okay.
See, we were in opposition for a couple of years.
Yep.
Then we're back in government, and I was the Environment Minister. I think I achieved more in the environment portfolio than anywhere. And it sort of went on from there.
We've been lucky enough to talk on this program to quite a few politicians. Not so much the leaders, because every time a politician comes on, it takes a while for them to relax because they're so used to giving the 3-second, stab with 5 words that's going to be spread out everywhere.
Yeah.
To be able to talk to them about why they got into politics, I find really interesting. So why did you?
Well, as I say, I was a member of the Labor Party, and I really felt the Labor Party was the way to go. Always felt that I was on the side of the little people, the battlers, the strugglers.
Do you think the battlers and strugglers are still there to the same degree as they were then?
Well, we're a better educated society.
We are, but the concept of working for a big firm is no longer the case. There's, everyone's, there's so many people working for themselves or within a small sort of employment
Well, I
group.
mentioned the Islington Railway Workshops earlier.
Well, that would have been...
During the war, there were 4,000 employed there.
Yeah, big difference to today.
Now there's 2 men and a dog.
Yes, exactly. Big difference.
Yeah.
So has politics sort of lost its importance between the haves and the so-called have-nots, do you think?
I think there may have been some merging, but I think there are still people who look to the Labor Party to improve their lot, just as there are probably those who look at our opponents to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
But I think the big change is this, that if you're in public life these days, you're far more in the glare of publicity than you ever were.
Yeah.
Look, I can remember my very first interview. Young fella a cub reporter came along, all the gear was there. He sat down and before they turned on the cameras, he said, "Look, I don't know much about this. What questions do you want me to ask?"
Oh,
and I thought, this will do me. This will do me.
I can make this point.
That's all changed.
Yes. But because it's become a bit getcha. It's trying to trap people into saying something that is going to be a lead line for a news service or whatever.
Sure.
It's a real shame. So you had... I've often wondered what it must feel like. I suppose it's the same in show business. One day you're in a show or you're on TV and then the next you're not and everyone forgets you. Did you feel forgotten at the end of your tenure? Is that
People kept running in and be saying, Now, I remember you,
Yes.
even now. But you see, what I did, having got out, and I got out because my wife was very ill. I thought I was going to be a carer. For a while, she got very much better, and she was caring for me as she'd done in earlier days. But I said, you've got to do something positive. You've really got to move on. Of course, I'd been very active in the Methodist Church, or the Uniting Church, as it had become.
As it is, yeah.
But I decided to go back and do another degree. That having been got out of the way, they then elected me as their moderator of the Uniting Church. So I had 2 years when I was very much back in harness, very much back in harness. People would say to me, is there much difference between being in politics and running the Uniting Church? I said there are some frightening similarities.
It's interesting, the politics in religion,
Yep.
even today, is terrifying, really, when it's really just about one thing instead of,
Well, yeah, I don't think you can generalise quite as much as that. But nonetheless, there are unfortunate aspects.
Well, there's property involved, there's money involved, and I guess they're the things that bring out the worst in people.
They do,
Yeah.
they do.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about with this amazing man, and we'll do that after this break. Our special guest is Don Hopgood. I'm just calling you Don now. Or Hoppy, I like Hoppy.
And whatever,
I think
whatever.
that's quite cute. Do you feel these days, having been a politician, do you feel politics has sort of gone a bit off the rails, mainly because of the fact that the media can report these 3-second quotes and things, and the public either believe in or don't believe in the politician, as has happened with Trump in America?
Well, there's no doubt that the politicians are under much greater strain, much greater pressure than they once were. But speaking of Trump, the more I look at the American political scene, the more I'm happy that I was involved in Australian politics and not American politics.
Oh, how right you are.
I think we're very, very fortunate. You see, I think although there are obviously lines of demarcation between the major parties, we don't demonise each other in the way that they do over there.
No, although there's been an awful lot of, get him type
Well,
stuff.
it does. The tactics within Parliament, I know that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's the
but
same.
the tactics within Parliament, I was watching the news the other night, one politician says this and the other one contravenes them. It's like, it's very hard for the public to understand what's the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a mechanism as a politician as to how to cut to the chase, cut to the truth?
Probably it was fortunate that I'd had that background as a school teacher.
Yeah.
Because you've got to get them to understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, and sometimes kids are pretty smart, and it doesn't necessarily follow that if someone's 37, they're going to know more than the 16-year-old.
Yes.
So I did bring some of those, call them skills if you like, to bear on the whole
Well,
thing.
they are actually. It's proper communication.
It is communication.
And when you consider that most politicians haven't come from a communications background before they became a politician, some of the people currently in federal parliament, you wonder where they're getting their information from.
You're right. Well, look, I can remember at one
That's a
stage saying to
worry.
myself, look, I could be a school teacher, I could be a minister of religion, or I could be a politician.
And
Now,
a musician.
In a sense, I've been all of them, although I was never ordained,
Yep.
and they're all about talking. Well, not all about talking, but they're very much involved with communication. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, as your music career has been.
Well, music is one of the great...
Now, we were hoping to have, sitting on this table...
Yeah, sorry, I should have brought it in.
That's all right. Just
weapon of
explain
mass
what you should have
destruction.
brought in. and show us your...
Embouchure. My embouchure.
I did so badly want to say that, but I thought if I say that, I'll get it wrong.
It's French. Yeah.
Is it a...
That's how you do it. That's how you do it, yeah. Kids get hold of it and they want to put the mouthpiece inside their mouth and blow.
Oh, okay, that doesn't
Nothing
work.
comes out.
No,
Nothing
it's
comes
not a
out.
blowing thing.
You got to use a raspberry.
Yes. Now, you don't have that burnt-looking lip.
Well, that probably means that I haven't played as much as I should have.
Oh, come on, you've played a lot.
You take Armstrong.
Yes.
There was only one place he could put his mouthpiece because he had scar tissue.
He did have scar tissue.
Right around
We're
there.
talking about Louis Armstrong, for those who
exactly.
don't know.
Yeah.
Is he one of the greatest trumpet players of all time?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
Is it in your head that you hear the music? I mean, you read the notes, but if you start to improvise, do you hear it in your
The
head
really
before you
good
play
ones,
it?
of course, the really good ones can hear a note and tell you what it is, whether it's F sharp or B flat or
Yep.
something. Go down the scale a bit, and there are those who can't do that, but once they get the key in their head, they can pick the intervals.
Right.
And then you get the rest who just have to read the music.
I got it. Yep.
They can't improvise.
Yep. So who have you played with in your life?
Oh, well, do you remember Dick Frankel?
Yes, I do.
I played trumpet with him on the Glenelg tram once. It was seniors week, and my sister-in-law, who was one of the organisers, rang up and said, we want a band on the Glenelg tram. We're taking the oldies down to the big pub at Glenelg. Will you bring your cornet along? So Dick and I played. It was a 4-piece band, actually played on the tram.
Yes. I've actually worked with them many times.
No doubt.
Those boys, yeah.
But
Do you still play?
Oh yeah, well in 2 ways. First of all, there is the Onkaparinga City Concert Band, used to be called the Noarlunga City Concert Band. That's a 40-piece band that rehearses every Friday night, and I'm one of their
Are you
trumpet
hiding up the
section.
back? Are you hiding up the back?
Oh yeah, trumpets, yeah they do.
They
and
do.
particularly when COVID's around, you push them right back.
Oh yes, because there's a lot of going on, isn't there?
But because you know,
Going on.
it's not what you think it is, it's condensation.
I know. I used to work at the Wonderland Ballroom here, and I remember the trumpet players tapping their trumpets for all the spit to come out.
That's right. But the other thing, of course, I've got my own band. I've got my own jazz band, 7-piece band, and we play for some of the retirement villages and things like that.
And that keeps you alive?
Oh, my word, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's trumpet, you've got to practice every day.
Because it's the diaphragm working, or is it what's
the lip,
happening here?
The lip. And the breath. And the
so you
breath
don't
control.
lose the lip?
I mean, I know 1 or 2 guys who, as they got older, were trumpet players, they gave it up and played the sax because it's easier.
Oh, because that's the blowing instrument.
Yeah, and you got the reed to help you
Yes,
get
that does the
that's right.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Don Hopgood Theatre.
Yep.
How did this come about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had been very much associated with it. I was the...
This is the TAFE Theatre.
The TAFE Theatre,
Down
that's right.
at the Noarlunga
You see,
City
somebody
Centre.
came, I was minister at the time, somebody came to me, a fella, Barry someone or other, with whom I'd been at school, and he was then current guru in theatre with TAFE. He said we should build a theatre as part of the TAFE thing, and we'll put on courses and that sort of thing. So we did. And I can remember the very first public performance in there was of the Noarlunga City Concert Band.
Really?
With a special guest, which was Kim Benithan.
Good gracious. Now, Kim Benithan was very well known here in South Australia, an old family, you could say, who was a jazz musician.
Yep.
Bass, I think.
No, drums.
Oh, drums.
Very good drummer.
It was Bob Lott that played bass.
Bob Lott played bass.
And I always associate him with Carclew here in South Australia. Don't know why.
Well, first of all, one member of the Benithan family lived there for a while.
That's probably why.
But in addition, Carclew was often used by a group called Jazz Action.
Right.
And Kim was involved with them.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But he was so entrepreneurial in the arts across the board, wasn't he?
Yeah, right.
And his family have gone into quite a bit of that, as well as sons and so on. But just talking about old Adelaide for people living here in Adelaide. But with the theatre, they didn't call it. They didn't call it the Don Hopgood Theatre.
No, that
originally.
came later. That came later. After I retired. Yeah.
And why did they then choose to do that?
I suppose they wanted to remember the guy who'd been their local member for 23 years.
Well, I ask you that because we all have different perceptions as to why things happen.
Yeah.
And I was involved with the theatres around at that time.
Yep.
And knowing who you were and knowing you, I kept thinking, what a great accolade.
Well, the suggestion came from John Hill.
Right.
Who was one of my successors in the electorate. Yeah.
As in fact it should be. Do you get free tickets?
If I asked for them, I would. I don't. I pay like everybody else. But I've got a funny story about the theatre. My portrait is hanging down there. It was done by a very good artist, and we had a official unveiling. Now, it's one of these warts and all sorts of things. Very good, warts and all. I got talking to this woman beforehand, and she was chatting to me about this and that. Obviously, she was a supporter and so on. When I was over, she came to me and she said, "That doesn't look too much like you. Are you sure the artist wasn't a Liberal?"
Oh, I love it. I love it. But it is a great honour.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So what do you want to do when you grow up?
Keep doing what I've been doing for a while, I think. I gave up the jogging. I now walk, do a lot of walking. I want to keep playing the trumpet for as long as I can. I'm still very much involved with the church, and of course with the Jazz Archive, which we set up in 2002.
Where is this?
Still going. Well, our office, we hire a room in Scott's Church on North Terrace.
All right.
But we've collected so much stuff that we've got 4 repositories. 2 in Scott's Church and 2 down at Lonsdale.
This is so important, though, to keep the history of what we, who we are and what we've done.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Been lovely talking with you.
Oh, well, I've enjoyed
although we've had conversations before, we've never had enough time to have a proper conversation.
Never is.
What are your predictions for the future politically? Can you see things happening? Can you see changes?
Look, I have partly disengaged myself from the political process. I'm still a member of the Labor Party and all that sort of thing, but I don't follow it in the way that I once did. So it is very difficult. I don't think things are going to change all that much, at least in the short term,
It seems to
depending
me
on how we come out of COVID.
Well, that's true. It seems to me, though, that the parties started travelling almost identically together, just arguing to and fro to each other. And it will be. It's the good of the people of Australia now. That's what we're all interested in, I guess.
Of course we are, yeah.
You should host your own TV show.
I might frighten the elderly or young children.
And we'll be back to talk more with Don in just a moment. Don, it's been a great pleasure talking to you on this episode. As you're getting into your senior years, we talked about what you want to do when you grow up, but you're still, the good thing about you is you're still as active as you ever were, really. Do you find that you've wound down in anything, or is this joy of life still motivating you to get off your feet and get up every morning?
I still live by the diary. I still am very, very busy.
Is that something that occurred during politics? Because you had to be...
There was a groove you ran down.
Yep.
Groove you ran down. But no, the thing is, you can, to a degree, choose what you want to do now that all that's behind you. Whereas there were those things that you had to do that other people required of you.
Yes.
You couldn't get out of it.
It's like working for a living, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
In reality.
Now it's more, I choose what I want to do, but it keeps me busy.
What's your greatest passion?
Or I suppose my faith, actually, my religious faith. Yeah.
It's a good way to end the interview, actually.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been just lovely talking with you. And it's been lovely having your company as well to meet this lovely man. So until next time we meet, keep yourself nice till then. See you soon.